When shall we three meet again? In thunder, lightning, or in rain?
When the hurly-burly's done, when the battle's lost and won.
Where the place?
Upon the battlefield, there to meet with Macbeth.
Fair is foul, and foul is fair, hovered through the fog and filthy air.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to an Apocalypsis Historia Live. Not exactly for a weird Woden's dog today. Maybe it's more of like a freaky Friggs day or something along those lines, you know? But no, it is in fact still going to be a weird Woden's dog day because, as you saw, not only in the clip, we're talking about, as in the thumbnail, we're talking about some weird sisters and Macbeth today. Pretty much one of my favorite things to talk about all the time, any time of the day. But thank you so much for checking in tonight with me as I go over my thoughts on this part of the play that a lot of people have. Some of their Orthodox scholars kind of have even a sort of admission or consensus that maybe Shakespeare didn't write these certain scenes, you know? And I don't know, I think it's kind of throws a wrench into everyone sort of understanding the play, and especially if you're in the authorship scene too. I feel like it also is sort of pertinent to figuring out, who the heck has a hand in changing this part of a scene in Macbeth, right? So, and I've got all this sort of heathen theological implications too. This is also definitely ties into my Weird is Weird video that I did last year. So if you're not caught up with that, this is definitely a continuation of this as well. And I actually did cover a lot of this material in a good friend of mine. His name is Zerlath Eternal, and I actually showed a lot of this stuff in his stream. So if you actually want to go check some of that out, I did it over there already. So this is just like me just kind of like pitching it again, but just, very concisely, just, kind of putting it on my own channel because I hadn't even done it on my own channel yet. But otherwise, if you haven't already, make sure to check out all the links down below in the description box. I do plenty of Substack articles, and we post all of our extra content on Patreon and on YouTube for our YouTube channel members, and I could not do this without all of my Substack subscribers, Patreon supporters, and YouTube channel members. Thank you all so very much. I am thoroughly grateful that I'm able to get on here and I talk with all these kind of guys and part of the channel members and Patreon people over on the private Discord. So if you end up joining any of those tiers there, you're going to get a Discord access. And so, we're usually hanging out and talking all the time about a lot of this stuff. And so, I'm sharing resources and sleuthing. And if you're interested in maybe doing the book club as well, and you're really just helping donate to us keeping the lights around here and giving me the time to, pour through some resources and, dredge up some like deep esoteric secrets from the interwebs, right? So, once again, thanks to the whole crew. Y'all know who you are. I talk to you all the time. And, so go check out everything below. Sometimes some of my essays turn into videos, and sometimes it's the other way around, where my videos turn into essays. So, it's just how it goes around here. Plenty of ways to support, like, share, subscribe, all that good jazz. But I think without further ado, we're going to get into this topic that pretty much got me into not just reading Shakespeare, but also questioning Shakespeare, and also getting obsessed with Odin, ironically. It's a weird story. See, I've like broken all these words, right? I can't even say half these words that are very common because, I've dove too hard into the etymology of such things, and so I find myself cringing every time I sort of say this sort of stuff. But what are we talking about here? If you watched my Weird is Weird video that I did last year, it's pretty much me just talking about how one definition of the word weird, or I guess more appropriately pronounced weird, in Old English, essentially meant fate and destiny, and it had all these really cool lines in Beowulf and The Wanderer and these old, epic old English poems. And somehow, after Shakespeare's play, slowly over time, the word weird becomes weird. It definitely has a sort of vowel shift change there. And that it also loses some of its majesty. It loses some of its other associations. And instead of being fate and destiny and something, like I said, very divine, it ends up being something, sort of ominous and kind of just strange or unconventional, right? And so it's that was me sort of tracing, where the word weird is cognate to, and essentially finding out that it's cognate to the Old Norse word for earth, which is essentially the main head Norn, the fate carvers in the Norse mythology. And there's 3 of them. Okay? So therefore you can now connect Shakespeare's 3 witches, right? He's got 3 witches at the opening act of the play. That's what my intro always is for the Weird Wilderness Dog streams, is a scene from the Macbeths all just smashed together. I've got every single clip of every single possible rendition of Macbeth just smashed in there. I've got like audio in the background from the Folgers performance, and I've got laughing and cackling from maybe the Polanski one in the background, just like intermittently. So yeah, all that stuff is just like everything Macbeth, and just boom, that's what I did. And so looking into this word essentially has like been my quest for like the longest time, right? And so yeah, finding out that the word weird, I've got it all pulled up here, right? Yeah, the old idea of weird being having to have power to control fate, right? Old English, weird, fate, chance, fortune, destiny, the fates. But in Old Norse, Erder, fate, one of the 3 Norns. But it's also definitely got to do in Old Norse with the idea of the past. Okay, Erd is basically one of the names in the Norns. In the Norns, their names are Erd, Skuld, and Verdandi. And their names basically mean past, present, and future, right? So we got some of these like epic pictures that I got up here for y'all for some Norns. I got all these some awesome pictures here. The Norns are by far one of my most maybe Odin and the Norns. I don't know if it gets more popular than that for some people. I don't know. I guess people like Thor and Loki for sure. But for me, it's like the Norns and Odin for sure, right? Yeah, I've got like a wood thing here that I burned with the weird web thing here, and I've got obviously the tattoo of it. I'm just like I'm like caught in their web, right? Ever since I read Macbeth, I was like, what the heck is this like? And so Chance and I joke about the majesty and the depth, the fathoms of Macbeth in that Shakespeare starter video. So yeah, I would go check that out. But once again, yeah, I got the Norns here. Erd, Skuld, Verdandi. You got the old one, Skuld, Verdandi happening.
When shall we 3 meet again? In thunder, lightning, or in rain?
When the hurly-burly's done, when the battle's lost and won.
Where the place?
Upon the battlefield, there to meet with Macbeth.
Fair is foul, and foul is fair, over through the fog and filthy air.
All right. Hopefully I have everyone back. Sorry for the technical difficulties. Apparently I kind of knew this, but I also forget that I guess every time I restart my computer, one of my fans is dead, so I have to like tap it and it turns back on. I have to replace it. But I got it turned back on, found some other external fan, PC fan, little tiny one, but I just have it like blasting that thing, so hopefully we'll be able to stay on. And I think I can snip it if it actually remembers that this is actually one thing, so I think I can actually cut out the part that I was out. But what was I talking about? I was talking about weird, I was talking about the Norns. Hopefully you can hop back in here. Let's get the regal picture back up here again, right? So yeah, the word weird, cognate with the Old Norse word erder, earther, you might hear it called sometime earth, fate, one of the Norns, but it's also basically means like the past, something that has already like been established. And yeah, I've got all these like cool pictures that I keep finding, all these like media for Nordic pictures here. Oh, let me see a bigger one. Here we go. Yeah. So, and what was I saying? Yeah, is the Erd? Yeah, sometimes I guess in the when I did the weird video, Erd is the old one. It's the past. I guess that would make the most sense, right? That's the one that did a lot of the talking in the God of War Ragnarok game. Although I didn't. I've never played it. I've only watched it vicariously through other gamers, I guess, minimally, when I was doing research for this. And there was a weird Shakespeare connection. Don't forget in that video, okay? I don't know if I've actually mentioned this on stream anywhere, but there was a weird, bizarre connection to Shakespeare in the God of War Ragnarok game. So Kratos is carrying around Mimir's head the whole time, okay? And, it gives him clues, blah, 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 blah. And at some points, even at one point, Mimir mentions, like in his past, that he actually served someone named Titania, which is actually one of the characters from Midsummer's Night Dream, sorry. And then when you meet the Norns, when you meet the Weird Sisters in God of War, they call Mimir Puck. And Puck is the name of the little mischievous, main trickster character in A Midsummer Night's Dream. So here I was just, I'm doing research on, the Weird Sisters, basically, kind of doing it into the Norns. Oh, kind of found the Norns and, God of War. Oh, that's kind of cool. Just clip some of that, clip some of that footage, right, to make it cool. And then come to find out, it's like, oh, dang, what the heck? There's like a Shakespeare reference like buried in this. Like, oh, wow, touche. Right? Makes sense to me, right? I stumbled upon the Norse because of Shakespeare, so it makes sense in the opposite direction, right? You're doing Norse research, and then you get into the sisters, So, and yeah, so I just got all these different pictures of the Norns. I love the weird web, probably one of my favorite designs. Yeah, the Norns are just one of my most fascinating, or one of my most favorite subjects to talk about all the time. Like I said, I got into it because of reading Macbeth. And so if you go read or you can go read it. You can go read my essay on Substack, or you can go watch the video on YouTube where I talk about how does the word weird from Destiny become something that is just ominous or strange or, unsettling, right? Something is uncanny or supernatural a little later. But then it becomes weakened, meaning odd-looking, strange, disturbingly different. And because most of it chalks it up to Macbeth, right? It's always like the associated article in this whole thing, okay? So, when I did that video, I kind of just showed that, if we look at the gloss, if we look at a concordance for Shakespeare, so we'll look at the full text, I've got it here, and I've got it also in this other one here. So how many times does the word weird appear in Macbeth? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, apparently, right? Not an insignificant number in regards to what I'm going to point out next, right? And I also point out that the first time the word weird appears is on Act 3, Scene 1, but Act 3, line 33. You got 333, and it's the weird sisters hand in hand, posters of the sea and land, thus do go about thrice to thine and thrice to mine and thrice again to make up 9, right? 333 and make up 9. Peace, the charms wound up. And so I think that last line is even more potent here, right? Because of this whole thesis I'm going to get into tonight, essentially talking about the changing of the word weird, right? My whole point was, hey, yeah, well, how did it go from this like grandiose weird, fate preserves a man who keeps his courage intact, something from Beowulf, right? Something that is actually divine and crazy and and sublime, right? Where somehow, like it even says here, yeah, it gets weakened to just being odd-looking, strange, disturbingly different. You go from this version of the Norns, from the Three Sisters, the Fate Weavers, to something like this. Like, yeah, creepy, nasty hag things, And I also show in Holland Shed that they're described as like elder creatures, as how they were described, or even fairies, yeah, but never explicitly witches. But in Macbeth, they're definitely described as witches per the stage directions, even though they call themselves weird sisters, right? But it's almost like these witches they're trying to call themselves the weird sisters, and in that sense, first little exegesis here is that when they do that, peace, the charm's wound up. It's like them invoking this energy, even doing this sort of rhymey hocus pocus, double toil and trouble. Oh wait, that's already Macbeth. You see how like the witch archetype is like already embedded for the English speaker because of Shakespeare, essentially, right? Our access to this archetype is actually through this sort of character here, the Weird Sisters, right? And so the Weird Sisters, they're calling themselves that in this little scene. And here, yeah, like I said, the thrice to thrine and thrice again to make up 9. Peace, the charms wound up. It's like, yeah, they've just finished doing this little hocus pocus routine, this little abracadabra, alakazam, little linguistic thing. And if you know anything about magic, there's always something to do with magic and creating things, creating in reality, right? You're going back to this logos or debar in the Hebrew sense, this idea of like a self-constituting idea of the word creating things, and that's why magic is word. That's why magic is spells, right? You spell a word, S-P-E-L-L, right? And yeah, the whole interplay between grammar and grimoire and magic. So, and in that video, I point out that, hey, when we look at the folio, when we look at the 1623 folio for Shakespeare's Macbeth, which is the oldest copy we actually have available in print because we don't have any quartos of it for when it came out in 1606. If you go look at the folio, which I got pulled up here for you, bada bing, yeoldarchive.org. Let's see if my power outage didn't screw it up. Looks like we're good. Oh, no. Let's go over here. Same thing. So here. Act 1, Scene 3, line 33. All, the wayward sisters, hand in hand, posters of the sea and land. Thus do go bout to bout, thrice to thrine and thrice to mine. Wait, did you see that? The wayward sisters. There's an extra W there. Wait a second, They just hit, if you see it in the modern gloss, they put the weird with the little diacritic above the I to get that little inflection, right? The weird. Make it a little, because it makes it an extra syllable. Because it would make sense. It wouldn't make sense if you said it in the weird. It's almost like one syllable if you say weird. But if it's weird, then you got that kind of extra enunciation there, right? The weird sisters hand in hand. If you said the weird sisters hand, it kind of breaks the rhythm of it. So you definitely need to enunciate there. But if you notice, wayward is the word that it's spelled in the oldest version of this copy of Macbeth that we have. And actually showed that in the first 2 acts, this is how they spell it. Maybe it's even the first 3. But the first 2 acts, they spell it wayward. And then later on, it changes spelling. And it drops the W, and it's just wayyard. What kind of, and per what I understand, apparently how you pronounce the Old English version of weird, this version right here, the W-Y-R-D, it's supposed to be like a... The middle Y letter is the your letter. It's the Urus letter with a little thing below it, but maybe it's associated with the U tree, the U-bow, and something like that. So it's got this like UI, flexion of the mouth to get it. So weird. Definitely like a double syllable, maybe, or the way it kind of sounds. I guess if weird, maybe if it's even one, if you just pronounce it right. I'm not a scholar in that sense. I try to really look this up as much as I could to really understand this pronunciation, but I find it fascinating that even the pronunciation, right? We have this vowel change that actually happens at this time. So instead of weird, which actually sounds very similar to word, I'm going to go into that whole crap and have relation to those two things another day. But even weird, yeah, it sounds is a completely different sound than weird, So, as you know, this in my pitch here is going to be that a lot of this context, a lot of this intonation is going to be flattened. A lot of this meaning is going to be flattened, right? And so that's going to be where I'm going to be heading with a lot of this stuff. And so, let me see. And yeah, the flattening, right? We're going from the divine to this. Oh, we're going from the divine to this, right? We're going from the divine sisters to these, nasty, grubby witches that are stepping above their station, as we're actually about to find out, okay? So, let me see. Let me make sure I got my... there's one more thing I want to show you as we're going into this, right? So, in that video, like I just said, that... let me show this first. So, when we're in the print for Macbeth, instead of seeing, like I said, if we look at a modern gloss, if you go to like your half price books, you go get a copy of Macbeth, they're gonna put probably this version of weird, right? But I just showed you in the oldest version of the text, we have wayward with an extra W in here. Well, wayward, is definitely its own word. By the 13th century, wayward disposed to go counter to what is right. Shortening of a wayward, turned away. Wayward and wayard, they definitely have this Proto-Indo-European were complex, to turn, to bend, as in to worry. You're like twisting, you're being strangled, you're being turned. Your wrist is turning. There's a lot of these were complex things about turning and twisting. Universe, worse. Universe is like a one twist, essentially, right? Or unified twist, or I guess, or something, and verse also in the musical sense as well. So, wayward and weird and weird are all going to be kind of related, maybe to this Proto-Indo-European sense. Some people buy it, some people don't buy it. You just have to you have to weigh your scholars against one another and see what they like to say. Now, but once again, it's definitely its own word. Now, you'll notice it's with the A's. We got the E's here in this, or EI. Maybe that's like it's the AWAS ruin or something like that, and how it's spelling. But otherwise, wayward is definitely its own word in meaning, as opposed to weird. They're two different words, right? It's, and so it's, I was making of note, like, hey, look, in all these modern contexts, they just gloss it for weird, but the first couple times it's actually wayward with a W, and then the last couple of times they switch it, they take out the W, and it's wayyard with a Y. Now, some scholars will say, well, there must have been two different editors, and so this other editor took over at the end, and he's a little different guy, right? He just spells things differently. So that's why it explains all this, all these different spellings. And I'm here to say, no. I don't buy it. I'm saying I think a lot of this is more deliberate than anyone has ever given credit for. And even if I'll show you in Macbeth in these certain scenes here, and here's where the linchpin of where some of my theory is. Not only because I don't think it even relies on it, because my theory was still like, hey, there's definitely like an association that they're trying to say or even make, like sound-wise, phonologically, maybe, I guess, and how it sounds, that they're conflating the word weird, wayard, and wayward. Wayward meaning literally something that is bad, wrong. That is how weird, wayard, in the Old English sense of fate and destiny, became to be associated with something ominous, strange, or unsettling, is because they're associated with the literal changing in the actual text of Macbeth, associating with wayard, weird, and wayward, literally badness. So that's why when you say, oh, it's weird, it's unsettling, it's kind of off. It's wayward. Now we've associated via the text of Macbeth, and how now they've all glossed it as the same word. Even though if you go read it for yourself, you'll see that the spelling changes, and wayward seems to be its own thing. And they'll say like, well, you know, as you just said, Brady, right? It's kind of like a weird UI spelling in the word in the middle here, so it's wayward. Wayward. Yeah, hey, you know, that's, you know, the spelling's not all uniform here. That's not fair, but it's like, I don't know, that extra W is not pertinent. It's weird. The original version is only like 4 letters long. If only 4 runes long. Maybe they had to made a diphthong with the EI, because I think in Chaucer, and I think also in Holinshed, it's the EI version. When they spell it, you don't even see the Y. Yeah, so I don't even know how that's even happening, but that's kind of interesting. But regardless, yeah, my whole pitch was, yeah, that they seem to be conflating and changing, and this is how, per they even say, yeah, the weird changes from this to this thing because of Macbeth. But I'm just telling you, not only because of they call the witches, the weird sisters, you know, witches, and they're kind of ominous and strange, but it's like, no, because in the Macbeth text itself, they're associating those 2 words together, and they change spellings halfway through the play, even though all of your modern copies they're not gonna write the wayward sisters hand in hand. They just wrote the weird sisters hand in hand. Which one's the right one? Which one's the right one? Should it say the weird sisters, the weird sisters, or should it say the wayward sisters? What were they trying to say? Now, here's where I think the real truth lies, or the real key lies, maybe. So, excuse me. In Macbeth, one of the most infamous things in Macbeth that people will talk about, and you'll never see it. Maybe you'll see it in the Folgers play. I guess I haven't seen that part of it, but you'll never see it in a modern movie rendition. It's not in the Polanski version. It's not in the 2015 version that I have a lot of the music from, which is, it's not from they're not going to see it in the Joel Cohen version. You're not going to see it in that Patrick Stewart version. I'm definitely sure you're not going to see it in there. I'm pretty sure. They don't show this scene in most of your Macbeth renditions. And why do they not show it in any of these Macbeth renditions? Because they don't think Shakespeare wrote it. They don't think Shakespeare wrote these particular scenes. So I'm going to show you on YouTube. Let me just type it in here, because if I type it in, we'll be able to see it. I'll type in like Hecate Macbeth. And you'll see that one of these actually did have a pretty good explanation of it. One was like a theater person or whatever. I don't really see it, but let me go to the actual Folgers thing, because I'm not doing myself justice here. But you'll find that, okay, so around middle of the play, the Greek goddess Hecate shows up, and she's pretty much telling the witches like, "Hey, y'all are out of line. Y'all need to do what we say, or you're under my magic, or you're getting your magic from me, basically, and you didn't consult me in any of this stuff." And so most people, if you go on like your basic scholar, you go, I think even on Wikipedia, maybe they'll even say it like that. It's just like a consensusly accepted thing. Let me get in here. So yeah, let me go to this exact scene, right? Okay, so Act 3, Scene 5. Let's read what they have here on the Folgers Shakespeare library website right here. Synopsis here for us. The presentation of the witches in this scene differs from their presentation in the rest of the play. Most editors and scholars believe that neither this scene nor the passages in 4.1, which you have a little bit of Hecate and the double twin trouble and all that good stuff, were written by Shakespeare. Scholars believe that neither this scene nor the passages a little up ahead were written by Shakespeare. So they think this whole Act 3, Scene 5 is not by Shakespeare. Now, why do they say that? I think it's Thomas Middleton. Why? Because Thomas Middleton, I think the play maybe gets revived a little later. Maybe Thomas Middleton's involved. If Chance is in the channel, he'll definitely elucidate us. I forget exactly how it goes. But it's something like the play gets revived later on, and they think since Middleton had something to do with some witch plays, and there's some overlap and maybe some of the stage directions about a particular song. But when I look in the folio, I don't see this mention of this song that I see in the modern rendition, so I don't know how that makes sense. But maybe it's part of the songs that they sing. And they'll say that since it was revived later on, it's Middleton adding the stuff in to the play itself to make it more modern or whatever, to link it with his plays maybe. Maybe Hecate's in his plays. I honestly don't remember off the top of my head. But regardless, most of your people will say, maybe your high school teacher will say that, yeah, we heard that Shakespeare didn't write this part, you know. Why? Because not only... I don't think they don't even have, they can't even match this textual part with some other part. But I think this thing is actually kind of interesting and important here. Okay, so we got, and here's also another thing, okay? Actually, if we look, I can pull it up here in a second. So it even says here, right? Thunder, enter the three witches, the ones we met at the beginning of the play, meeting Hecate, right? And so if we look at Hecate, right, I got her Greek and Roman version pulled up, right? It's, or Hecate, I guess it is an E, but at the end it's got the last letter has the soft E sound, so I thought it would be a soft breath E, like Hecate, or Hecate. Hecate, I guess is how Wikipedia is supposed to tell me to say it. Anyway, she is a goddess associated with magic, maybe in the more in several senses, yeah. Crossroads, night, magic, witchcraft, and the moon. She's definitely also a major player in Hesiod's Theogony. Very interesting parts in there. But yeah, in a lot of modern Wiccan senses, yeah, she's definitely Hecate or Hecate is definitely associated with modern Wicca and a lot of that sort of stuff. And so if you know anything about, witches meeting at the crossroads, right? This is because of Hecate, right? Because look right here. The Romans often knew her by her epithet of Trivia, an epithet she shares with Diana. Literally, each in the roles as a protector of travel and of the crossroads. Trivia, literally, three ways. So that's why she's also got this like three-natured aspect here in this picture, right, that I actually have in the thumbnail. So this is Hecate, and so she's in Macbeth. It's like a character Macbeth. She's like, boom, I'm right here. What are y'all doing? And yeah, she's got a bunch of contested etymologies about what her name means. Some people may be associated with some of this Egyptian stuff, which I thought was interesting. Because, why is that interesting? If we looked at the actual 1623 folio, I can try to find it here in a second. Act 3, Scene 5. If we actually look for the Act 3, Scene 5, the way that her name is spelled is actually with the E at the end. And I think I read some explanation about Acta Tertius. Okay, yeah, so we're in the Act 3 here. They have the explanation that the reason why they don't have her name spelled with the E at the end is because of some, mistranslation from Greek or English or whatever. I forget whatever reason they had it in there. Act 3, Scene 5. Is that what it was? Act 3, Scene 5. Yeah. Let's go back here. Act 3, Scene Tertia. Quinta. Here we go. So if you look down here, under Hecat, and here they just say, why now, Hecat? Say they don't have the E at the end of the name here. See? Original Shakespeare, no E. Oh, Lord. Original Shakespeare, no E. Hecat. Modern Shakespeare, Hecate, or Hecate, whatever you want to pronounce it. I don't know. It's definitely three syllables, right? And maybe it's also because they needed to be two syllables too for this scene rhythmically or whatever. I forget. They basically, from what I remember, them giving the excuse that they don't have the E because of whatever transliteration reason maybe. And even if that's not the case, even if that is the case, rather, sorry. Even if that is the case, it is interesting to me that one of the attested etymologies is perhaps related to this ancient Egyptian goddess and god named Hecate and Hecate. Yeah, because Hecate sounds a lot closer than Hecate, right? So if in the original one, if it's just Hecat, it sounds a lot more like Hecate, this Egyptian god associated with what? Magic and witchcraft. Same things that Hecate is associated with, right? Same energy. And this ancient Egyptian concept of Ka, I guess, is also associated with like, or Heka or something is associated with magic and words, essentially, right? So yeah, the name for Egyptian word for magic is this Heka god, and he's possibly related once again etymologically to Hecate. But once again, her name is not Hecate in Shakespeare. She's supposed to be Hecate, but they just spelled Hecate. So yeah, got a little interesting little overlap there, right? Does that mean Shakespeare or company knew about Hecate, the ancient Egyptian goddess of witchcraft or whatever? This frog Pepe chick? I have no idea. But interesting to think about, right? As the origin of the great Hecate. See? So, but back to the Macbeth here, right? So, we got Hecate right here in the scene. And so what does she say? Let's go back to this one because it's a lot easier to read. So we got Hecate enters. So this is the first time you see her, right? So up until this point, Macbeth is like, he's killed the king, he's doing more killing, and he hasn't got a second prophecy yet. But the witches, up to this point, like the whole time as the audience, you're like, yeah, what the heck were those things, right? Like, yeah, everything he said, actually came to pass, like, yeah, we actually saw the witches. Wow, that, from the beginning of the play, right? The play opens up with them, right? Fair is foul and foul is fair. Like, that's the opening of the play. And then we see them, give Macbeth the prophecies. And then we see, him enacted, and, things kind of spiral out, and, it's kind of getting crazy, right? So maybe even from a dramaturgical point, right, maybe the audience is sort of craving to see them come back on the scene again, right? So once again, the setup is that they were the Norns, they were the Weird Sisters, they were the Weird Sisters, right? But and here's where the scene where maybe there's this irony or this flipping or this twisting or this wording, right, of everything, And so what happens here? So we got the three witches come back, and they're like, why now, Hecate? You look angrily. So Hecate's like mad at our original three witches, right? Hecate, have I not reason, beldams as you are, saucy and overbold? How did you dare to trade in traffic with Macbeth and riddles and fares of death? All right, yeah, how dare you trade in traffic with Macbeth to riddles and affairs of death, right? That's exactly what they were talking about at the beginning of the play, where they're giving Macbeth those really prophecies, right? Thou will be king of much more, and blah, 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 right? And I, the mistress of your charms, the close contriver of all harms, I, the mistress of your charms, so witches, you weird sisters, I guess they're not weird sisters anymore, even though they wanted to call themselves that. I'm the mistress of your charms, Hecate, the close contriver of all harms, was never called to bear my part or show the glory of her art. So she's like, yeah, you didn't hit me up. You didn't, properly invoke me. You didn't properly pay duage. You didn't properly pay, your dues to me. If you're gonna use my powers, you better cough up some tithe or offerings or whatever. So, and which is worse, all you have done hath been but for a wayward son. Wayward. Hey, there's that word again, right? Remember, like I said, in the original, the first time weird ever appears, right? In your modern glosses, they'll say the weird sisters hand in hand, scene 3, line 33. But if we go to the original folio, oh God, I forgot I skipped it. I can go back a little bit. Yeah, if we go back to the weird sisters in the beginning of the play, then we'll see that, yeah, they use the word wayward, right? Which I've been arguing is kind of its own thing, right? Yeah, here we go, wayward, right? But here we go in this Hecate scene, she's also using the word wayward, right? Using the word wayward. Now, how many times does wayward appear in Macbeth? Remember, so far, weird appears 6 times, and I kind of said, yeah, somewhere around the middle of the play, it kind of changes spellings. Let's just type in, technical difficulty. Whoopsie daisy. All right, so what was I saying? So yeah, like I said, here we have this Hecate scene that all of your scholars, like even Folger's on here, is saying that, yeah, Shakespeare didn't write this scene. And I've been having this whole pitch about, yo, there's a conflation of the word weird and wayward deliberately, I think, in the spelling, right? I just showed you in the folio. They're definitely using a bunch of W's here the first couple of times that they use weird, even though all of your modern ones just replace it with weird, right? Not wayward, which is its own word, something that is going bad, something that is turned away, right? And here we've got Hecate using this word. So let's just look it up in Macbeth itself. How many times, how many times does the word wayward appear in Macbeth? Right? We already looked up weird. It appears 6 times. Let's look up wayward, right? Here we go. It only appears once. And it's in this Hecate scene. So you're telling me, why wasn't this one glossed as weird? How come this isn't number 7? Huh? If y'all are telling me, if they're saying like, oh yeah, the spelling's kind of, a little iffy, blah, 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 when you look at this one, with this W here, they're like, this could be pronounced weird. Wayard, if you're trying to do it the old-fashioned way, maybe. Right? The weird sisters, hand in hand, not the wayward sisters. So then how do y'all, are you sure that this is also not the same thing? Or isn't it just interesting that, at least, they'll say that Thomas Middleton is the one interpolating it. Anyway, isn't it interesting that Thomas Middleton is still using this word and this one little scene? If this is the one scene that Shakespeare didn't have his hands on, maybe, it's still kind of interesting that Middleton maybe is still picking up what I'm still interested in, right? Is this conflation or this usage of the word wayward and weird. Regardless, there needs to be an answer about, oh yeah, I think that's kind of interesting about, that's like one of the most important words in this whole thing, right? So here we go. Let's just continue on before I spin out. Hath bid for a wayward son, Macbeth, right? Spiteful and wrathful, who, as others do, loves for his own ends, not for you. But make amends now, get you gone, and at the pit of Acheron meet me in the morning. Thither he will come to know his destiny. Right? And this word destiny is definitely associated with weird. Right? The word weird definitely used to mean having to control fate. Or literally fate, chance, fortune, destiny. Right? So it's old. The word weird in the old English sense used to mean fate, destiny, etc. Or at least have this connotation, right? And here we're getting the word, this destiny sense and the word wayward or weird in the same thing, Your vessels and your spells provide, your charms and everything beside. I am for the air. This night I'll spin unto a dismal and fatal end. Great business must be wrought ere noon. Upon the corner of the moon there hangs a vaporous drop profound. Here I'll catch it to ground. And that distilled by magic's light shall raise such artificial sprites, as by the strength of their illusion shall draw him to his confusion. He shall spurn fate, scorn death, and bear his hopes, bound wisdom, grace, and fear. And bear his hopes above wisdom, grace, and fear. And isn't that exactly what he does? He does spurn fate. He does scorn death kind of at the end of the play. Life is but a walking shadow. It is a tale told by an idiot, full of sand and fury, signifying nothing, right? That's what it does at the end of the play. And you all know security is mortal's chiefest enemy. Ah, man, that line hits. That's just not... Oh, man, yeah, because Macbeth wants security, right? That's why he's going to go get this second prophecy, He wants, to be reassured of all this stuff, But it's not just the security of, it's a potent line about, security about what is security? Yeah, what can you actually obtain it? What does it look? What do you describe it? Is it a physical security, a financial security, a spiritual security? Music and a song. Hark, I am called. My little spirit, see, sits in a foggy cloud and stays for me. Hecate exits. Sing, come away, come sail away. First witch, come, let's make haste. Soon she'll be back again. They exit. So like I said, they like to say that Shakespeare didn't write this. Nothing to do with it. But I'm saying, hey, I was already on this investigation looking at the conflation between the word weird and wayward. And look at this where does this scene appear? Act 3, scene 5. This wayward, it's kind of like in the middle of the play. It's almost like kind of around when the spelling of weird is kind of changing, you know? It may only be the last, 3 and 4. Oh, yeah, 3 and 4. Yeah, so maybe, the first two acts, it's wayward, and then 3 and 4, it's wayyard. And, yeah, just hovering about, right over here. Oh, no, it's right here, I guess. So hovering about right here is, you're getting this Hecate scene. And it's also thrown in this wayward association once again, and calling Macbeth the wayward son, and that he will scorn fate and death. Yeah, they have this nihilistic crumbling, I would assume, right? So, maybe it's more deliberate and a little more interesting than we thought. Now, when we think of the word wayward, right, it's a turning away of something that is good, literally, right? A disposed to go counter to what is right. Turned away, like you turned away from God, right? You went wayward. Now, what is Hecate's name again? Hecate's name is trivia. Literally 3 ways. The crossroads. So it's almost like invoking the crossroads god. Invoking this way of having multiple paths, and you chose the wrong path. You chose the wayward path, right? Somehow conflating destiny and fate and these ideas of those kinds of projections, associations, or concepts with waywardness. And there you got the crossroads god sort of channeling the way. Channeling the way for this association of the word itself. It's like she direct the energy through this magical mimetic performance to get Old English weird, fate, chance, and destiny to just odd-looking, strange, disturbingly different. From divine Norns to witches. And that's all through this meme, right? And that's why that last line I said that is so important, I think, too, right? Peace, the charms wound up. And even Hecate is also saying something, too, about, this idea of spells popping off. The spell itself was changing the meaning of the word weird. That was the spell. They changed the spelling. Literally. They changed the dang spelling in the folio, right? That is the spell. And when you hear it on stage, are you hearing wayward? Are you hearing wayward? Are you hearing weird? Or all of it? Or it's all the same now. It's all the same now. It's all the same now. Now it's not weird, bithful, erad, like from The Wanderer, fate is fully readable. Or from Beowulf, weird, I don't remember it in Old English, but it's, weird preserves a man who keeps his weird, or fate keeps a man who keeps a man alive, spares his death, if he's able to keep his courage or his constitution intact, his grit intact. Fate often spares a man. And then what's the other good one? Fate goes, weird goes ever as she must. And definitely has usually associated with she as well, right? So it's a feminine word. Once again, because it's the name of one of the divine Norns. Erd is cognate with the word weird in Old English. They turned this word and these ladies into this. Through this word association. And maybe, as Chance and I would say, it's like, Chance and I are already into like group theory and a lot of this stuff, and I don't know who, maybe Thomas Middleton did write this middle part of this play. Boom, okay, we got this one figured out. Can we just use whatever stylometric stuff that they use to determine that to figure out the rest of the play, because I want to know this. And how the heck did they, know to use it in this sense, right? They conjured up this idea of, they tricked Macbeth with riddles and prophecies of death as the Norns. Thrice to try and thrice again to make up 9. We are the Wayward Sisters, the Wayward Sisters. They donned this grammar effect. Oh my god. Yeah, the word glamour has got to do with illusory magic. Not this modern sense of glamour, glitz and glam and looking, fancy and posh or whatever. But glamour is an idea of illusory magic, like you're doctoring up your image, And glamour also has got to do with this idea of grammar. You can definitely, heighten someone's image through good words, talk up a good game, sell them off. Be a good salesman for some of those ideas, right? Make something look sexy, sound sexy rather. So that's why grammar, words, and glamour, literally illusion magic, are related etymologically. So the sisters, these witches calling themselves the Weird Sisters, even though they call themselves, I guess, they're kind of telling you that we're the Wayward Sisters. We're not the real ones. But we're still going to corrupt the whole image. We're going to corrupt the whole word anyway. It's going to be flattened. You're not going to get wayward and weird. You're just going to get weird. So, you got like I said, you got the trivia, the Trivia goddess. Oh, that's not her. That's Hecate. You got the Trivia goddess, the three ways goddess at the crossroads, right? The one who's directing energy, the one who's the watcher of that energy, right? And here, yeah, she's the one basically being like, those witches, Hey, I'm Hecate. Y'all were out of jurisdiction. Y'all did not hit me up. Y'all did not pay proper dues. And so now, she basically is like, yeah, we're going to continue this thing. It's whatever. But, yeah, your vessels and spells provide, your charms and everything decide. He will come to know his destiny. And yeah, Macbeth is going to hate or just be totally nihilistic about fate and destiny. He thinks that there's nothing to it. There's nothing to fate and destiny. It's pointless. It's nihilism, right? It's a whatever, right? That's tale told by an idiot, right? And, maybe he does have a little bit of a, going out moment, right? He does kind of still fight for it in the end a little bit. And he does, have hope above all reason, I guess, too, right? As Hecate does say here, too. And yeah, I'm just super interested in that this power, this context, this deep layered word, weird, in the old Anglo-Saxon context is being depowered here. Even if it says it here, right? A weakened meaning. Weirdish, weirdly, weirdness. As a verb, changed by witchcraft or sorcery. Yeah, it's not the... Because once again, what was interesting about the word weird, fate and destiny in this Old English sense, is that it's got, once again, cognate with the Norn of the past in the Old Norse sense. And so your past is contextual to your fate. Your fate is not some predestined point up ahead. It's more of becoming and being right now out of everything that it has culminated from you and everything that from the behind projecting forward, right? It's not some not a predestination. It's a happening now because of everything that has already happened. That was fate in this old weird sense, in this old English sense. And now it's just odd looking, strange, disturbingly different. Once again, it went from divine Norn to witches. Grubby cross-dressing witches too, might I add, right? Because if in the old Shakespeare days, these witches would have been played by dudes. And so that's what's cool about this scene and why I have it in here, why it's important, because the Folgers Theater did it with, obviously these dudes, and it's really horrific and crazy looking, right? And yeah, that's the whole point about, having, and I think that's what's great about the irony, Because even you're yourself, you know, at this point in the play, right, you're like, oh my god, like those are the freaking Norns, like what the hell's going on, like that's crazy. And then you see Hecate, you see the three witches, and the three witches, right, they're like, oh, why are you mad, like Hecate, what's going on? And she's like, what are y'all doing, like y'all are out of line, y'all are out of jurisdiction, which just gets in this whole context of controlling magic, and that you can't go out of bounds. There's a higher force ready to like come bear down on you, right? And they're gonna right the wrongs. And you know, Hecate has definitely got apparently some justice and retributive aspect to her, apparently. And so, yeah, with her, what did I say? With her, with Hecate coming to, with the jurisdiction, okay? Because in the first line, right? And that's what I was gonna say. In the first line, posters of the sea and land. We are the wayward sisters, the weird sisters, hand in hand, posters of the sea and land. What are posters? Posters are the fastest way you could travel in this Renaissance time period, essentially, right? Where you might be familiar, where it's the idea of a poster is, you know, the system where you ride a horse as far as you can go, and then you get off that horse and you get on a fresh horse and you go off on the next one, right? And so that's what like postmen were. It's like, you know, part of the postal system, right? And it's this idea of, you know, we've got post stations, I guess, and you know, but that's the fastest way to travel on sea, and I guess on land too, but the, you know, posters were, they'll gloss it and say, yeah, posters are just swift travelers, but posters were part of this actual system about fast traveling. Okay? And so this system is also, posters is actually a government controlled system, right? Like you just can't just go you gotta buy a ticket, or you gotta have some way of actually being able to interact with the poster system in a sense, okay? Not anyone can just like hop on the government train, right, and just do whatever they want or help, you know, etc., right? And so to be able to ride on this poster system, like you got to follow the laws. You're under a jurisdiction, much like these witches in the opening part here of this play. Oh, we're posters of the sea and land, but it's like you're only posters if you're following the rules, if you're under the jurisdiction. And so that's why it makes sense when Hecate comes in and say, you didn't pay your dues to me. You're out of line. You didn't, you know, invoke me properly. You were you broke the rules. You were under a jurisdiction doing things that has auspices over you or whatever, right? So it's almost like, yeah, this idea of, and of course in 1604, you're going to have King James going to publish the Witchcraft Act, which is going to punish a bunch of witch-related stuff, much like a diviner or maybe weird-related stuff, right? Definitely turning things that are maybe a little more like this and turning it into something like this, again, right? And so King James is coming down hard, apparently, on witches and writing his demonology book. And it just so happens, yeah, you're getting the Norns in this play kind of getting subsumed from, you know, this Norse Germanic pagan, you know, previous auspices. And even it has a good prevalent in the old Saxon context too, right? It's not totally depowered. It's still got a lot of good weight in the old Saxon context. And then eventually by around this point, it's getting portrayed to look like this. These are the weird sisters, and then the rest is history. So, I think that's pretty much everything I got to lay out about this explanation of the Hecate scene and how no one, I think, has ever tried to pitch it this way. No one has ever connected the word weird and wayard and wayward in this deliberate sense that I have. They've definitely noticed that, you know, oh, it's a typological error, blah, 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 or, you know, it's an editor level, but I'm like, no. I think this actually goes deeper to the meaning of the words itself and how it actually got changed in meaning and how that's actually so important. And if we go to this idea of the Sapir-Whorf theory, which there are strong versions and weak versions of this theory, which basically explain how much do words control our perception. And if how much words do control, and you know, what degree do words control our perception, right? If you don't have a word to express a certain thought, can you even hold that thought at all, right? And basically they kind of came down to like, yeah, there's strong versions and weak versions of this theory. And it's like, I'm kind of the exact same argument I'm kind of making tonight, right? Where we got Hecate, right? Goddess of three roads, channeling a meaning in a certain direction, changing her meaning, channeling like almost like a dam, damming off one way. So it's not completely cutting it off, but it's going to be hard to swim upstream, and you're kind of, diverting the flow in a different direction, only towards one meaning, flattening the meaning once again. That was kind of pitching earlier, okay? So with that in mind, this idea of changing meanings by damming the meanings themselves, right? You're changing and getting rid of, fate, chance, and, the fates and destiny, and slowly channeling the meaning into these other senses, okay? And what was I going to say about this stupid thing? What was I trying to connect with that? Because when what was it? I had another example of another word that I needed to pair that with. Oh Lord, I thought I had it pulled up here. Which one? Yeah, because I said I had this concept of like when you're trying to change a word, if you're actually doing mimetic word meme magic, you can't just erase it completely. Yeah, you have to kind of associate it or slowly pollute it or slowly corrupt it or something along those lines, right? Man, what was the one I was just gonna say? I'm totally blanking here. Totally lethal logic. Shoot, what was the thing I was gonna say? It had something to do with the weird sisters, or this word, or this changing of the meaning. Oh well, it wasn't part of the thing. But I've just got a lot more examples of this particular concept of, like I said, routing a meaning in a certain direction to essentially control. Oh, so back to the idea of the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis. Okay, this idea of how your words control what you think, okay? And maybe taken to the most extreme example, it's going to be something like newspeak in George Orwell's 1984, right, where they remove ideas of privacy, this word privacy or freedom, and how can you think about freedom or privacy if you don't actually have the word to conceptualize that concept, right? And that's taken to its, uber sci-fi extreme or something along those lines, okay? But one of these other people that I was researching, they wrote a paper on this idea, and they were basically saying, like, instead of it being like a yes or no, we should view it on a scale. And one thing that was kind of interesting that they kind of brought up is this idea of uncertainty in a word. And the harder a word is to bear down its empiricalness, how hot or how big it is, whatever the word is, the more uncertain the word is to fill a large kind of like cognitive metaphorical gap in your head. Okay, so if I was to say like everyone's got words for like blue and green and red, right? Because those are very tangible and they're so much more relatable to other things, right? So the word red, it's like, oh, that reminds me of blood or apples or cherries, right? You think of blue, you think of cold, or you think of blueberries, and you think of there's all these other extra visual things that you can actually pair up with these certain words, okay? But certain words, let me get here then, let's get a little deep. Now certain words, unlike others, right, are gonna have little to no way of actually expressing in a tangible and empirical sense. Like you can't put your hands on these next words I'm gonna say here, unlike you can like a microphone or a book or a table, or even like the wind. Like I can kind of feel the wind, or fire. I can like see fire, even though it's like a phenomenon. Okay, but certain words may not have a form that we can actually readily fill a conceptual concept with right away, okay? So something like justice. Justice in some senses, in some cultures, is like, balancing the scale, sort of like getting even, right? And another sense of justice is a sort of like standing above, or, standing above in another sense, right? Not this sort of like weighing of the scales. Something like love. Even in English, that's a sort of terrible word to use, or that's where we sort of lament maybe in a sense that love in English can be so many different things. You know, I love my dog, but I love my daughter, but I don't love them in the same capacity at all, right? Like that, they're not even the same. You know, I love books. It's not the same as like loving these other things, but yet we use the same word for everything. But something like love is not something you can really like get your mind around and get your hands on. It's going to be something a little different for everybody in a sense. You know, it's almost ungraspable. Something like time. How do we even conceptualize time, and what metaphors do we use to think of time as what it is? One of the disturbing ones that I saw is that, we liken time to money because we can spend, save, and invest time. And what does that sort of do on a neurocognitive psyche level is that all we think of is everything is essentially a commercial sense. Everything is literally just capitalism, even down to our conception of reality itself is nothing more than this sort of commercial exchange of time. And, is there something hindering? That thing is, time is like something that you're like buying and spending all the time, rather than maybe in the sense of like, we are, then that time is not something that you're like losing out on. Time is something that you're like, I don't even like to say gaining, but something that you're like building up on, or something that you're like experiencing more of, or something, something of a fuller, richer experience, and something is so transactional and commercial, which I think is kind of interesting in the sense of like, so that's kind of my point. So that there are some words like time, like love, like justice, that you can't quite relate to another physical thing. Like I can't call justice yellow, and I can't call, maybe you could try to call love red or pink or something along those lines, but it's still going to be a little different for everybody, right? It's still not quite empirically graspable, be able to be grasped. And so another one of these words is going to be fate and destiny. And those words are even sort of different in themselves. And so I just talked about the old word in Old English for fate or destiny, which is going to be weird or weird, which has got to do with this idea of like your fate or your destiny, your endpoint, is contextual as a sort of rating out point from the past to arrive at that said point. But it's like the past is the future, almost in a sense, is your destiny, is the past that you've lived, is the life that you've lived, is your destiny. And where the word destiny itself, where we think of as like your I thought it had to do with this idea of your destination, right? Your destiny. It's like your destination, like way over there, down there. But actually, I guess in this even in an older sense prior, it actually meant something along the lines of to stand apart, almost like to individuate, maybe to use like a Jungian term. That was your destiny, to actually stand apart from the crowd and to be your own person. That's literally what destiny meant, not to achieve a thing or win the girl or slay the dragon. No, it was actually to draw up and stand apart yourself from everybody else. That was destiny. That's actually more of a powerful concept than being like, what's my destiny? Like, what's it going to happen? It's like, no, how do you actually make a destiny? You stand apart. You actually, individuate. You actually, engage with the world, essentially, right? Engage with your own mind. And I think those conceptions of fate and destiny are way more powerful than how we kind of conceive them on a maybe day-to-day, what's my fate? It's way over there. Like, what's going to happen, right? No, it's weird. It's happening now into the future. It's everything that's already happening too, right? That has already happened. And so seeing in real time, maybe in Shakespeare, is what I'm arguing, is that these colonization of these very powerful, maximum superior wharf, vulnerable words like fate, time, destiny, money. We can't quantify money maybe in a sense too. Right? What is money? Those words being colonized in this sense by a commercial sense, or even a neutered, watered down sense, seems to be my argument essentially of like how you slowly change a culture over time. And maybe if we're sort of a people that, I don't know, I'm kind of on a team like poo-pooing, certain aspects of modernity and, trying to figure out what's essentially Renaissance and essentially how to move forward. But I think that, these old concepts, in that we've forgotten how to look backwards. We've forgotten how to be weird, literally, to look back, to see forward, in a sense, right? It's also kind of like what a Renaissance is, almost in a sense. In a Renaissance. And so seeing these words get changed in the sense, I just can't help but think of the implications later on down the line. And maybe one of the words I haven't fully I haven't fully verified this, but a word that maybe takes over the department of weird or fate in the sense, right? Of like, what's my weird, what's my fate, or, what is weird and what is fate? One of the words that kind of took over, maybe, because obviously we just saw here that weird or fate gets depowered or gets weakened into just weird, just something odd or strange, to being, the other word that takes over is going to be providence, as in like God's providence. But providence in the Latin word is going to be like literally providere, literally like pro, like is in like forward, like, out there, and then videre, video, literally to seeing, okay? So like forward seeing. And so I feel like even that word providence itself is this concept of like only looking forward, forgetting to look back and to realize how the backwardness plans the trajectory for the path ahead. You don't know where you're going if you don't know where you've come from, in a sense. And I feel like with this idea of providence, of someone else watching at everything else for you, someone else has got those bricks laid out. It's this idea that it's now that's the force like bearing on you, or that you're waiting to experiencing it. It's like the idea of a world of being not one of being one of the present, that the present is ever more punching in forward into the future and ever for more radiating it out of the past. It is an ever-present active thing. Whereas if it's providence, it's passive. It's a world of becoming, not a world of being. And so when we think about the cognitive effects of such a thing, okay? Because we already know, especially for our modern people, right? So the people looking right now, we already know the effects of our attention span with the use of these devices. The device that you're probably watching to me on right now. We already know that the phone, we already know that the screens, we already know that what it does to our awareness and to our attention span, in a sense, is if you're not careful, especially the media that you watch, and how they're addicting anyway, right? That we've somehow over the last 15 years, I grew up before they were ubiquitous, and now it's completely different than the time that I remember too. And so to have everyone literally, having on their persons all the time, and what has that done? I feel like more people have talked about the acceleration of time they feel, that being essentially plugged into the clock all the time, essentially, gets your brain wired and essentially in anticipation and in a hyper sense, anticipating every single moment. And they'll talk about the people that will essentially detox off of technology, right? They'll go out and they'll go on the steppe, right? Or go ride with horses, or they'll go in the woods, right? And they won't have any cell phone. And they'll talk about how time feels so much slower. Time feels so much more deliberate. And that's merely, from just lacking the devices that we're on right now. But that's what I'm sort of saying. How does this bleed down, not just from a technological level, because language itself is nothing more than a technology. So you're changing the technology, you're going to change the people and how they feel and interact with it. And so changing the words is going to change essentially the operating system of our brains. And once again, I just am trying to wrap my head around the implications of such a concept, and changing the software of a human being. And to bring it home, remember if I was telling you that the name for Hecate is trivia, right? Three-way, three, via, as in via, way. But if we were to look up the definition for the word trivia, what do we get? Details, considerations, or pieces of information of little value or little importance or value. So that's from Oxford Languages, I guess. That's the word for trivia. Once again, what are the chances? What are the chances that not only this word, weird, which was cognate with the old Norse word Urd, literally one of the names of the divine goddesses of fate, whose name is now cognate with a word that simply means gross or weird or strange. The same thing kind of happened with Hecate, goddess of the tri-roads, right? She was watching travelers, making sure that you weren't a giant jerk, to people, essentially, right? That's why there's a little bit of that retribution aspect to her. If you wrong people on the roads, that sort of law of hospitality sort of vibe. And her name was Trivia. And what happened to her name? Her name just means silly quiz game. Details. Pieces of information of little value or importance. Did they trivialize trivia? Well, now you know trivia about trivia, right? Yeah. So, once again, just noticing a lot of these, maybe it's specifically female in some cases, a lot of female deities taking the pejorative hit here, in a sense, right? Trivia, Hecate, now she's the nasty, dirty goddess of witches and stuff like that, not retributive, divine justice of hospitality sort of type thing, right? I guess you can be people, wicked feminists being like, see, I told you patriarchy sucks, right? In some cases, like, witch act, y'all definitely got the raw end of the deal here, being associated with stuff like being wayward. That's why weird and all these practices and witchcraft and all these things get flattened together into one thing. They get channeled together into one thing. And this idea of channeling in water, I think, is going to be very, very relevant. I think what are we doing right now? Everything to do with water, I feel like, in a sense, right? Even, we're all obsessed with currency and money, and we, put our currency in banks. Banks control the way that rivers flow, our cash flow. So, and this idea of channeling and damming rivers. I think of, damming a meaning of a word and routing it to only mean like one thing, essentially, right? And even doing the spelling, doing the literal spelling craft, conflating the word weird and wayward. Gotta hand it to him. Pretty impressive stuff. I can't believe I've ever found myself on this sort of the argumentation about this sort of stuff, but I just can't help but notice that divine goddesses getting turned from this into this, and the word weird being from divine fate and destiny and the past to being ominous and strange and wayward. So, that is the Apocalypsis Historia exegesis of the Hecate scene that most scholars will say Shakespeare didn't write that. What is Shakespeare? What is Shakespeare? Not who is Shakespeare. Like, what is Shakespeare, man? And I think a lot of people also feel a little icky about the Hecate scene in Macbeth because they're like, didn't they know that Hecate is Greek and Macbeth is like Scottish? Didn't they know those two places are like not the same, And then you can go watch my Troy and Britain stream. Because kind of found that no, the Bronze Age Mediterranean world is probably a lot more connected to the Northern European world than we maybe ever expected. So, no, I don't actually find it kind of weird anymore to see romantic, Brittonic stuff anymore, or any of this sort of inflation, right? And who even knows, right? I had a wild pitch about, like maybe, they spell it Hecat in the original Macbeth printing, so maybe that's what they're talking about. I'm sorry, they're talking about Hecate, this goddess of magic from aging. I don't know, but I don't know if they really know that or not. But it's still just fun to kind of think about those sorts of types of things. But the idea that, I never once again expected to sort of be making this sort of noble pagan savage anti-colonialist sort of a pitch here, maybe, right? But maybe the Anglo-Saxons, they just colonized the Brittonic Celtic people that were there before, or maybe the people, all my Hyperborean and heathen related people would be like, no, man, it wasn't that like that. But I honestly just don't know. Honestly, I just I've heard it mixed ways. So maybe that's all it ever is. It's nothing more than a syncretic game over and over and over again. Maybe it is, maybe it's not. But man, dude, the spell thing. They changed. They did a spell. The charms wound up. They did a spell through the dang spelling of the word, man. Yeah. So, like I said, that is my my Hecate scene exegesis for Macbeth. Like I said, Macbeth is probably a play I'll come back to over and over and over and over again. I'll look at every single scene and pull back the layers and see what I can find for y'all. Because I think, I guess it looks like it was my my weird to be involved with weird. It was what I was meant to be all along, right? It was the thing that I worked towards ever since I was interested in stories and stuff like that. I guess it's just what was meant to be. And so I don't mind. I think it's pretty cool. I think it's the destiny. It's the weird I would have chosen for myself anyway. So yeah, what does it mean for a? I think that it also does. It makes me ask a lot more questions about Old English Christian texts and what we can kind of see and read between the lines between these two worlds, and this Renaissance world and the medieval world, and then the pre-medieval world as well. So, and yeah, because I have a lot of thoughts now on the word weird in Old English, because I want to do a little exegesis on the line from the Wanderer, and I'll talk about it. I think I'll talk about that next time, but about how the word weird or weird is kind of that same Proto-Indo-European etymologic ballpark, that were complex, the W-E-R complex. Writ, write, word, and weird. All seem to be, the same, like, little interesting little complex, right? And so I think that there's more interplay that could be made between these certain words now that you maybe have that association, and what does that fully mean? But I think we'll save that all for another time. Yeah, I want to talk about more Odin. I want to talk about some more runes. I want to talk about some more of Urdswell. But this was all just supposed to be about Hecate, and it was supposed to be about this scene that everyone argues over. You can go watch plenty of people on YouTube be like, yeah, Shakespeare didn't write this. But now you can be like, but doesn't, I don't know. I think it kind of really makes the play click. I think it really does kind of make you question a lot of that interesting stuff anyway, right? Maybe it wasn't Shakespeare's intention to necessarily ruin the word. Oh man, it's just like I don't even know where to go with this subject. There's so many more lines of thoughts I would like to bounce off with people. Other people would have to be spitballing ideas with me before, because I would just sound like a crazy person going back and forth. But I have some ideas about other things. Baconians, I'm giving y'all a bone. I have some ideas now with some of the stuff that's actually happening in the courts around the same time that Macbeth is coming out, actually. And it's got to do with maybe doing away with the law terrae, with fighting in the law terrae, the law of the land, which is actually going to be associated with some of the old Anglo-Saxon law codes and law systems that have been around since Alfred the Great, literally. And here you got Francis Bacon, who doesn't like that. So take that for what you will. Maybe because some people are like, yeah, Bacon, he's awesome, but maybe this. I also know people are like, Bacon's so awesome because he's so damn awfully evil too, right? So yeah, there's definitely some people out there too. But otherwise, Hecate scene. I hope you like this whole presentation. I plan on putting this all into a nice and succinct essay, because I'd like to make this like a real scholarly pitch here, a real interpretation of the scene. Because I wonder if Chance and I could ever work in some pitch about it being, not a revival thing maybe, and not something that he added later on. Because I think with Middleton being way too spot on, knowing to add this word wayward here, and how I already cued in on the conflation between those two words, literally in the spelling itself, is it just clicked it all for me. So I have a hard time separating this thing out of the play now, that I just think it really, really makes the play make a lot of sense in a way. But otherwise, y'all can let me know if you liked it or not, if it makes any sense to you. Let me know if you think if I'm onto something with all these divine goddesses getting their names weakened and trivialized, or am I barking up the wrong tree? So definitely let me know. Zeralath. Oh, I didn't see you over here in the chat. Good to see you, bud. Yeah, man. Y'all go check out his stream. We talked about some magic. We talked about a bunch of wacky stuff over there. And otherwise, we need to do another one again. So if there's nothing else that, no other questions I need to answer for tonight, I could stick around for a minute as we close up the chat. And so make sure you check out the links down below if you want to push back against my argument for me, help me strengthen it, or if you see any holes or other considerations, maybe, of course, I would love to hear it. Changing the weird, the divine goddess, fate and destiny and the past, and the Sapir Whorf idea of changing our mental states by the words we use? What paths do we carve in our brain? And what fates do we carve for ourselves when we orient our time or orient our ideas of fate in a particular way? Is fate something out there waiting for me to get to it? Or is fate happening now? And has been happening? What's the more powerful version of fate? This or this? You can go with this, or you can go with that. You know what I'm saying? Okay. So, if that is all for tonight, I think we will close it here. I hope that you all enjoyed the rambling stream. Hope you learned some new stuff about Macbeth, or saw some angles you've never heard anybody pitch before in regard to this. Yeah, I could probably I've been talking about the Weird Sisters forever on this channel. That's like Chance and I joke, and I've joked over and over that half my videos on this channel are probably something to do with Macbeth in some way. That's like what got me interested into it. And lo and behold, I got really interested in Odin, so here I am. So yeah, I'll just keep doing this until my fate has been fully wound. So this is how it goes, So otherwise, I hope you have a wonderful, lovely evening or morning or whenever you happen to see this. It's evening for me. And I may be back next Wednesday to do a stream at night. I'll be back from vacation, but we'll see. But I'll probably have some notes ready for another stream along this weird topic again, because it's near and dear to my heart. So, otherwise, yeah, like, share, subscribe, do all that good stuff. Check the links down below in the description. Thank you so much to all my Substack supporters, Patreon subscribers, and YouTube channel members. Thank you all so much. Look forward to talking to you all at the book club and so on and so forth. Thank you all for checking me and my theories and everything. And I think I'm gonna have to close out one more time, even though I played it multiple times. I'll play it one more time. The outro with my Norn Weird Sister outro again with my Macbeth mashup. So, without further ado, I hope you all have a good one. Nullius in verba. Read it for yourself. Go read the 1623 folio for yourself. Make sure I got all the spelling right in there. And I will see you all on the next one, everyone. Adios.
When shall we three meet again? In thunder, lightning, or in rain?
When the hurly-burly's done, when the battle's lost and won.
Where the place?
Upon the battlefield, there to meet with Macbeth.
Fair is foul, and foul is fair, over through the fog and filthy air.